As she entered my class, I saw my own face, but younger, staring back at me. My daughter had been dead for 6 years. But little did I know that this girl was my daughter that I believe was dead 6 years ago. The moment 6-year-old Bryn Ashford walked into my Portland dance studio, everything I'd built from the ruins of my life began to crack. Auburn curls that caught the late afternoon sun like copper fire. Hazel eyes with those distinctive honey gold flecks, rare genetic markers my optometrist once called 1 in 50,000. The way she twisted a strand of hair around her finger when she was thinking. That slight inward turn of her left foot during warm-ups. She wasn't just familiar. She was me. Have you ever seen a stranger and felt like you were looking into a mirror of your past? Have you ever felt a connection you couldn't explain, a pull toward someone that defied every logical explanation? Hi, my beautiful family. Welcome back to Mr. William Chronicles, where we tell stories that make you feel something real. If you're ready for a gripping tale of betrayal, a mother's unwavering love, and the daughter who brings a shattered family back together, hit that subscribe button right now, slam the notification bell, and drop a comment telling me where you are watching from. I'm Harper Whitmore, or at least that's who I'd become. 3 years ago, I fled Boston with a new name. Professionally, I went by Kieran Hayes, my middle and mother's maiden name. I became a ballet instructor because being surrounded by children gave me purpose, filled the impossible void left by the daughter I'd held for exactly 17 minutes before she was taken for routine tests and never came back. March 14th, 6 years ago. Mercy General Hospital, Boston. Complications during delivery. Emergency C-section. I'd hemorrhaged badly, lost consciousness during surgery. When I woke groggy and confused, they told me my baby girl had died. Congenital heart defect. Nothing they could do. I'm so sorry, Mrs. Ashford. They gave me a death certificate. A tiny urn with ashes. Grief so consuming I wanted to die too. My marriage to Grant Ashford, brilliant, intense, impossibly controlled Grant, shattered 6 months later. We were too broken, he said. We reminded each other of what we'd lost. The divorce was fast. Too fast, I'd realize later. I signed papers I barely read, took the settlement money, and ran to Portland to rebuild from ashes. For 6 years, I visited a grave in Boston every March 14th. For 6 years, I carried that urn in my closet, unable to scatter the ashes, unable to let go. For 6 years, I taught ballet to other people's children and pretended the hole in my chest wasn't there. Then Bryn Ashford enrolled in my advanced children's class. I noticed everything immediately. How she organized her dance bag with meticulous precision. Everything color-coded, perfectly aligned. I'd done the same thing as a child. My mother had photos. How she held her water bottle, with that distinctive grip, pinky extended. How she hummed softly while stretching. The same tuneless melody I'd hummed my entire childhood. The way she drew butterflies in the margins of the attendance sheet while waiting for class to start. Butterflies. My favorite subject at her age. Miss Kieran, Bryn said after class one day, her voice trembling, small hands twisting the hem of her leotard. Do you think my mama loved me before she died? My heart shattered into 1,000 pieces. I knelt beside her, fighting tears I couldn't explain. I'm certain she did, sweetheart. Daddy says she would have stayed if she could. Those honey gold flecks appeared in her eyes as tears gathered. That sometimes mommies go to heaven even when they don't want to. But I think maybe I wasn't good enough to make her stay. I couldn't breathe, couldn't speak. Your mama would have moved heaven and earth to stay with you, Bryn. I promise you that. What I didn't know, what I couldn't know, was that I was her mama, that I was promising a truth I didn't understand yet. If you've ever lost something precious and thought it was gone forever, you need to hear what happens next. Hit that like button right now and drop a comment telling me, would you recognize your own child after 6 years? Because this story is about to break your heart and put it back together in ways you never expected. Over the next 3 months, I fell in love with Bryn Ashford, not as a teacher loves a student, but with a fierce, protective intensity one couldn't name. She was brilliant, reading at a 4th grade level, excelling in every subject. But she was lonely, always standing at the edges while other children bonded, watching rather than connecting. Just like I'd been. I started researching, obsessively. My daughter's blood type had been AB negative, the rarest type, only 1% of the population. What were the odds? My eye color. Those honeygold flecks were a genetic anomaly. What were the odds? Same birthday, same hospital, same distinctive bone structure. The coincidences piled up like evidence at a crime scene. And in 2 hours, I had a parent conference scheduled with Bryn's father, Grant Ashford, my ex-husband, the man who let me believe our daughter was dead. For 3 months, I taught my daughter without knowing she was mine. Every Tuesday and Thursday evening, Bryn would arrive at the studio with her nanny, that careful smile on her face, and my chest would tighten with something I couldn't name. Love. Recognition. An ache so deep it felt like drowning. "Watch this, Miss Kieran," she'd call out, executing a perfect arabesque, her face glowing with pride. And I'd watch. God, I'd watch everything. The way she bit her lower lip when concentrating on complicated footwork. How she'd pause mid-spin to tuck that rebellious curl behind her ear. The small dimple that appeared in her left cheek, only the left, when she smiled genuinely. All things I did. All things my mother had documented in faded photo albums I'd left behind in Boston. During water breaks, Bryn would sit beside me, close enough that our knees touched, and talk about everything. Her favorite books, all the same ones I'd loved at 6. Her fear of thunderstorms, but fascination with lightning. How she liked to draw before bed, because it made her feel less lonely. "Do you ever feel lonely, Miss Kieran?" she asked one evening, those hazel eyes studying me with unnerving intensity. "Sometimes," I admitted, "but teaching helps. Being around wonderful students like you. Daddy says I help him feel less lonely too. It's just us, you know. Since Mama died." She traced patterns on the studio floor. "He works a lot, makes important medicine or something. But he always reads to me before bed. Says I'm the most important thing in his whole world." Grant. Reading to our daughter every night. Being the father I'd never gotten to see him become. The thought twisted something painful in my chest because I remembered Grant before everything fell apart. 29 years old, brilliant and driven, building his family's pharmaceutical company into an empire. But with me, in those stolen private moments, he'd been different. I remembered his hands, strong, careful hands that knew exactly how to touch me. How he'd traced the curve of my collarbone after we made love. His voice rough against my ear. "You're everything, Harper. Everything I never knew I needed." I remembered the intensity in his storm-gray eyes when he'd look at me, like I was the only real thing in his carefully controlled world. How he'd pin me against our kitchen counter at midnight, desperate and tender, whispering promises against my skin. The pregnancy had terrified us both. I was 25, still finding myself. He was building an empire. But we'd been happy, hadn't we? Or had I imagined that too? "Miss Kieran." Bryn's voice pulled me back. "You look sad. Just thinking about someone I used to know." "Someone you miss?" "Yes." The word came out broken. "Someone I miss very much." This story is about to take a turn you won't see coming. Subscribe to Mr. Williams Chronicles because we tell stories that matter. Stories about love, loss, and the kind of second chances that break you open and rebuild you stronger. Hit that subscribe button now. My obsession grew dangerous. I pulled out my old research, spread it across my apartment floor at 2 a.m. Birth certificates, blood type documentation, photos of myself at 6 beside photos I'd secretly taken of Bryn. The resemblance was undeniable. I contacted the hospital in Boston, requested my medical records from that day. What I found made my blood run cold. The attending physician, Dr. Marcus Pierce. The same doctor listed on Bryn's birth records as family physician in her school file. The anesthesiologist, paid by a private account 3 days after my delivery. $500,000. I hired a private investigator. Asked him to dig into Grant's mother, Vivian Ashford, ice-vein socialite who'd never thought I was good enough for her golden son. What he found was a conspiracy. Bank transfers. Forged documents. A death certificate signed by a doctor who'd received the largest consulting fee of his career the day my daughter was supposedly cremated. My hand shook as I read the investigator's report. Vivian had orchestrated everything. The isolated delivery, the convenient complications, the papers I'd supposedly signed while unconscious, giving up all parental rights. Papers I never actually signed. She'd stolen my daughter. Let me bury an urn of ashes that probably came from a fucking crematorium's discard pile. Let me grieve a living child for 6 years while Grant raised her alone, believing I'd abandoned them both. The parent conference was in 3 days. Grant Ashford, CEO, billionaire, father to our daughter, my ex-husband, the man who'd let his mother destroy me, and I was going to burn his entire world down. The studio felt too small at 5:45 p.m., too quiet. The autumn sun cast long shadows across the hardwood floors, and my hands wouldn't stop shaking as I arranged Bryn's progress reports on my desk. Sydney, my closest friend and fellow instructor, leaned against the doorframe. Last chance to have backup. I can stay. No. My voice came out steadier than I felt. I need to do this alone. Harper, she still called me by my real name when we were alone. If he's really your ex-husband, if this is really your daughter, you shouldn't face him without. Without what? A lawyer? The police. I laughed, but it sounded broken. And tell them what? That I think my dead daughter is alive based on a hunch? They'll think I'm insane. Maybe you are having a breakdown. Her voice was gentle, worried. Maybe grief is making you see patterns that aren't there. Then stay in the hallway. I met her eyes. If I'm wrong, if he walks in, and it's clearly not Grant, you can drive me straight to a therapist. But if I'm right, if you're right, everything changes. At 5:58 p.m., I heard footsteps in the hallway. Confident. Expensive shoes on studio floors. That particular sound of Italian leather and old money. My pulse hammered in my throat. The footsteps stopped at my door. I looked up. Grant Ashford stood in my doorway, and 6 years collapsed into a single, devastating moment. He'd aged. Silver threaded through his dark hair now, catching the fading sunlight. Lines bracketed his mouth, creased the corners of those storm-gray eyes I'd once loved enough to marry. He wore a charcoal suit that probably cost more than 3 months of my rent, every inch the billionaire CEO he'd become. His expression was neutral, professional. The mask of a man used to board meetings and negotiations. Then his eyes met mine. The mask shattered. Color drained from his face like someone had opened a valve. His mouth opened, closed. No sound came out. The portfolio he'd been carrying slipped from his fingers, hitting the floor with a dull thud neither of us acknowledged. We stared at each other across the small studio, across 6 years of loss and lies, across the terrible truth that hung between us like smoke. Harper. My name came out like a wound, like a prayer, like an accusation. I couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. The room was spinning, and the only solid thing was the horrible recognition in his eyes. He knew who I was, which meant he'd known all along, which meant Bryn was mine. My daughter was alive. What are you doing here? His voice was harsh, strangled. I'm Bryn's teacher. The words came from somewhere distant, someone else's mouth. What are you doing here? I'm her father. Are you? The question hung heavy with accusation, with 6 years of grief condensed into 2 words. Grant stepped into the studio, closing the door behind him. The click of the lock echoed like a gunshot. His hands were shaking. I'd never seen Grant's hands shake. We need to talk. You think. Venom dripped from my voice, surprising us both. 6 years, Grant. 6 years you let me think she was dead. Harper, I don't. I held up a hand, and he froze. Don't you dare tell me it's not what I think. That little girl has my face, my mannerisms, my everything. She was born the same day, same hospital, same blood type as our daughter. She's mine. She's my daughter. The daughter you told me died. It's complicated. Complicated. I stood up, my chair scraping loud in the quiet room. You let me bury an empty urn. You let me visit a fake grave every year on her birthday. You let me grieve for 6 years while you raised our daughter and told her I was dead. You need to understand. I don't need to understand anything. My voice was rising now, years of pain and loss exploding outward. I need you to tell me the truth right now. Is Bryn my daughter? The silence stretched. Grant's jaw worked. His storm gray eyes, once so familiar, were filled with something I couldn't read. Guilt, fear, regret. Yes. The word was barely a whisper, but it hit me like a physical blow. She's yours. My legs gave out. I sat down hard, gripping the desk to keep from falling. How could you? The words came out broken. How could you do that to me? I thought it was for the best. For the best. I laughed, and it sounded hysterical. You stole my child and let me believe she was dead, and you thought it was for the best? You have to let me explain. Explain what? Explain how you're not a monster? Explain how there's any possible justification for what you did. Grant moved closer, close enough that I caught his scent, sandalwood and something darker, something that still made my pulse quicken despite everything. Despite 6 years and betrayal and grief. My mother, he said finally. She orchestrated the whole thing. Vivian. The name tasted like poison. She never thought you were good enough for our family. When you got pregnant, she saw her chance. He ran his hand through his hair, a gesture I remembered from our marriage, from when he was stressed or scared. The delivery was complicated. You were hemorrhaging. They had to put you under for emergency surgery. You were unconscious for hours. His voice went rough. During that time, my mother told me you'd sign papers, that you didn't want the baby, that you were leaving me. That's a lie. Fury ignited in my chest. I never signed anything like that. I wanted our daughter more than I wanted to breathe. I know that now. He stepped closer. But then, I was 29, terrified, and I just watched you nearly die. My mother showed me documents with your signature. Custody agreements, giving me full rights. Divorce papers. Everything looked legal. So you just believed her? You didn't question it. She told me you'd confessed to her weeks before. That you weren't ready to be a mother. That you felt trapped. His eyes met mine. It fit, Harper. You'd been distant during the pregnancy. Scared. I was 25 and terrified. My voice cracked. That doesn't mean I didn't want my baby. It means I was human. I realize that now. But in that moment, with everything happening so fast, I believed her. We stood 3 feet apart. Close enough that I could feel his body heat. Close enough to see the pulse jumping in his throat. Close enough that 6 years of grief and anger and impossible longing collided between us. So you took Bryn. My voice dropped to a whisper. You took her and let me think she died. My mother said it would be easier. A clean break. You could move on, start over. I could raise Bryn with the resources she needed. And the death certificate? The ashes. Dr. Pierce handled it. He was in my mother's pocket. Grant's expression hardened. He forged the documents, arranged for the ashes, made everything look legitimate. I hired a private investigator last year, Grant said finally, to see how you were doing. He found you here, teaching, alone, no husband, no other children. And I started to wonder if everything my mother told me was a lie. You've known for a year. The words came out flat, dead. I suspected. I didn't know for sure. And I didn't know how to approach you. How to tell you that everything you believed was wrong. Silence filled the space between us, heavy and suffocating. You could have started with the truth, I said, and destroyed Bryn's world. She thinks you're dead, Harper. She mourns you. How was I supposed to tell her I've been lying her entire life? That's not my problem. That's yours. You created this nightmare. You deal with the consequences. I know. He sank into one of the small student chairs, looking suddenly defeated. You're right. I didn't know what to do. So I did nothing. And then I became her teacher. When I saw the school assignment, saw your name on the roster, I nearly pulled her out. He looked up at me. But she was so excited about you. She came home every day talking about Miss Kieran. How kind you were. How you understood her. Because she's my daughter, I whispered. I connected with her because she's mine. Grant's penthouse overlooked the Willamette River, all floor-to-ceiling windows and cold modern luxury. This wasn't the home we'd shared in Boston. This was the life he'd built after me, after he'd stolen our daughter. "Coffee," he offered, gesturing toward a kitchen that probably cost more than my annual salary. "I don't want coffee, Grant. I want answers." I set my bag down on his marble island, pulling out the file my private investigator had compiled. "I want to know exactly how deep this goes." He nodded, loosening his tie, that same exhausted gesture from our marriage. His shirt stretched across his shoulders as he moved, and I forced myself to look away. "My office is through here." I followed him down a hallway lined with abstract art, trying not to notice the framed photos of Bryn at every age. Birthday parties I'd missed. First day of kindergarten I hadn't been there for. Christmas mornings that should have been ours. 6 years. Gone. His office was dark wood and leather chairs, walls lined with medical journals. But what caught my attention was his desk. A photo of Bryn front and center, and beside it, partially hidden, a photo of me, from before, from when we were happy. My younger self smiled up at me, honey gold eyes bright with joy I'd forgotten. "You kept that." The words escaped before I could stop them. Grant followed my gaze. "I kept everything. Every photo. Every letter you wrote when I traveled. Your favorite coffee mug. The blanket you always stole from my side of the bed." He paused. "I couldn't let you go, even when I thought you'd chosen to leave." Something twisted in my chest. Dangerous. I couldn't let myself feel sympathy. "Not yet." "The evidence," I said, opening my file. "Let's start with Dr. Pierce." For the next hour, we laid it all out. Bank statements showing the $500,000 transfer from one of Vivian's shell corporations to Dr. Pierce the day after Bryn's birth. Email exchanges between Vivian and the doctor discussing the arrangement, carefully worded but damning. "Jesus," Grant breathed, reading messages he'd accessed from his mother's cloud backup. "She planned this for months. Before you even went into labor." "The forged custody papers?" I asked. He pulled up scanned documents. "These are what she showed me. Your signature. I thought it was real. But look." He zoomed in. "The pressure points are wrong. It's a copy, probably traced. A good forgery, but not perfect." I studied my own signature, the one that had stolen my daughter. "How did you get these?" "I've been building a case." He ran his hand through his hair, that stressed gesture. "When my investigator found you last year, I started questioning everything. I went through my mother's files, her computers, phone backups." He moved closer to show me something on his laptop, and I caught his scent, sandalwood and cedar, the same cologne from our marriage. The same scent that used to cling to my skin after he'd pinned me against our kitchen counter at midnight, desperate and tender. I shifted away, maintaining distance. "There's more," he continued, his voice flat. "Recordings. My mother recorded her conversation with Dr. Pierce. She recorded when she told me you'd signed the papers. She kept evidence of her own conspiracy, like trophies. Can we use those in court? Already gave them to my lawyer." He scrolled through files on his phone. Harper, the death certificate. Dr. Pierce admitted in one recording that he falsified it. The ashes in the urn weren't even human. They were from a crematorium's general waste. The room tilted. I gripped his desk edge. I visited that grave. Every year. I brought flowers. I talked to, my voice broke. To nothing. To a lie. Grant reached for my hand, without thinking. His fingers were warm, calloused. A detail my body remembered before my mind caught up. The touch sent electricity through my arm, and I hated that I felt it. Hated that 6 years and betrayal hadn't killed whatever connection we'd once had. I pulled away. "Your mother." I forced steadiness into my voice. "Why go to such lengths?" "Control." Grant's expression hardened. "She never thought you were good enough for the Ashford name. Too young, wrong background, too independent. She saw the pregnancy as her opportunity, a way to give me an heir while eliminating what she saw as a liability. She stole our daughter to maintain her social standing. She stole our daughter because she could. Because she has money and connections and power, and she's never faced consequences for anything. Until now. I open my laptop, pulling up more documentation. Because I'm going to destroy her, Grant. Legally. Publicly. Completely. He studied me for a long moment, something flickering in his storm gray eyes. You've changed. I had to. Grief either destroys you or forges you into something stronger. I chose stronger. I can see that. His voice dropped lower, intimate. The woman I married was soft, gentle. You're still those things with Bryn, but there's steel underneath now. Fire. Don't. I stepped back. Don't look at me like that. Like what? Like you still want me. Like 6 years didn't happen. Like you didn't destroy everything. I do still want you. The words hung between us, raw. I never stopped wanting you, Harper. Every day, for 6 years, I thought about you. Wondered if you were happy. Regretted every choice that led to losing you. You didn't lose me. You threw me away. I know. He moved closer, close enough that I could feel his body heat. And I'll spend the rest of my life trying to earn you back. I'm not here for you. I'm here for Bryn. I know that too. His hand lifted, hovering near my cheek, but not quite touching. But Harper, eventually we're going to have to deal with what's still between us. There's nothing between us except 6 years of lies. That's not true. His voice was barely a whisper. And you know it. I did know it. Standing in his office, surrounded by conspiracy evidence, I could feel the pull between us, magnetic, inevitable, terrifying. We tell Bryn this weekend, I said, deliberately changing the subject. Together. Then we file for joint custody before your mother can make a legal move. Agreed. He pulled out his phone, but his eyes stayed on mine. I'll call Dr. Helena right now. She specializes in family trauma. She can help us tell Bryn the truth. As he made the call, I turned to the window, looking out over Portland's skyline. Somewhere out there, my daughter was doing homework or drawing or getting ready for bed, thinking her mother was dead. In 3 days, everything would change. For all of us. What would you do in Harper's position? Would you forgive the man who stole 6 years from you? Comment below, because this decision is about to change everything. Subscribe to Mr. Williams Chronicles if you believe in second chances and the kind of love that survives the unforgivable. The courtroom felt like a cage. Dark wood paneling, fluorescent lights that made everyone look sallow and exhausted. I sat beside Nathan Cross, my lawyer, watching Vivian Ashford across the aisle, perfectly coiffed silver hair, Chanel suit, expression carved from ice. She looked at me like I was something she'd scraped off her Louboutins. All rise for the Honorable Judge Patricia Morrison. Judge Morrison was in her 60s, sharp-eyed, with the particular expression of someone who'd heard every lie and excuse imaginable. She reviewed the case file with careful attention before looking up. This is an extraordinary case, she said. We have a mother petitioning for custody of a child she believed deceased for 6 years, a father who has had sole custody during that time, and a grandmother claiming grandparents' rights, while also questioning the mother's fitness. She looked directly at me. Ms. Hayes, or should I say, Ms. Whitmore, you're claiming your daughter's death was faked. Yes, Your Honor. My voice came out steadier than I felt. I have evidence that my former mother-in-law conspired with medical professionals to fake a death certificate and steal my daughter from me. That's a serious accusation. Nathan stood. Your Honor, we have financial records showing a $500,000 payment from Mrs. Vivian Ashford to Dr. Marcus Pierce on the date of the child's birth. We have email exchanges discussing the arrangement. We have witness testimony. Circumstantial. One of Vivian's lawyers interjected. My client is a philanthropist who has made numerous donations to medical professionals. $500,000 on the exact day of the birth. Nathan countered. That's quite a coincidence. We'll hear testimony, Judge Morrison said. Call your first witness. Vivian's team went first. They called Dr. Pierce, who looked nervous, his eyes darting between Vivian and me. Dr. Pierce, Gordon Fletcher, Vivian's lead attorney, began. You delivered Bryn Ashford 6 years ago. Can you describe the circumstances? The mother, Ms. Whitmore, had complications. Hemorrhaging. Required emergency surgery. And the baby? Delivered via C-section. Healthy. Then why was a death certificate issued? Dr. Pierce hesitated. His throat worked. There was a misunderstanding. What kind of misunderstanding? He looked at Vivian, whose expression promised retribution. I cannot testify to that without invoking my Fifth Amendment rights. The courtroom erupted. Judge Morrison banged her gavel. Order. Dr. Pierce, are you invoking your right against self-incrimination? Yes, Your Honor. Noted. You're dismissed. Fletcher looked rattled, but recovered. We call Grant Ashford. My ex-husband took the stand, his expression carefully neutral. He was sworn in, those storm-gray eyes finding mine briefly before focusing on Fletcher. Mr. Ashford, you've been Bryn's sole parent for 6 years. Correct. And during that time, did Ms. Whitmore ever attempt to contact you or the child? No, because she believed our daughter was dead. Fletcher's jaw tightened. Mr. Ashford, are you testifying against your own mother? I'm testifying to the truth. Grant's voice was steady, absolute. My mother orchestrated a conspiracy to remove Harper from my life and from Bryn's life. She paid Dr. Pierce to fake a death certificate. She showed me forged documents claiming Harper wanted to give up the baby. She manipulated both of us. He pulled out his phone. I have text messages between my mother and Dr. Pierce discussing the plan. Financial records. Emails outlining the conspiracy. Grant looked directly at Vivian. I have 6 years of guilt for not questioning what I was told. But I'm choosing my family now. My real family. Vivian stood, her face white with rage. How dare you? I did everything for you. Mrs. Ashford, sit down, Judge Morrison warned, or you'll be removed from this courtroom. Vivian sat, but her eyes promised murder. Nathan's cross-examination was brief. Mr. Ashford, in your opinion, has your mother's influence been beneficial or harmful to Bryn? Harmful. My mother's obsession with control and appearance has made Bryn anxious and isolated. She's better off without that influence. Do you believe your mother should have visitation rights? Not until she acknowledges what she did and makes genuine amends. After 3 hours of testimony and evidence presentation, Judge Morrison called for a recess. When we reconvened, her expression was granite. In light of the evidence presented, including Mrs. Ashford's refusal to testify and Dr. Pierce's invocation of the Fifth Amendment, I'm granting joint custody to Ms. Harper Whitmore and Mr. Grant Ashford. 50-50 parenting time. Equal decision-making authority. She looked at Vivian. Mrs. Ashford, you are prohibited from any contact with Bryn Ashford until both parents agree to supervised visitation. This hearing is adjourned. Relief washed over me. We'd won. But that evening, bringing Bryn to my apartment to explain the custody arrangement, victory felt fragile. She sat between us on my couch, her small hands folded in her lap, processing what we'd just told her. So Daddy lied? Her voice was so small. Mommy didn't die. Grandmother Vivian lied, Grant said gently. I believed her lies, and I'm so sorry, baby. Bryn turned to him, tears streaming down her face. You kept Mommy away from me. Her small fists hit his chest, not hard, but desperate. Heartbroken. For my whole life, I wanted a mommy. I asked for a mommy every birthday, and you had her, and you didn't tell me. Grant's face crumpled. He pulled her close even as she struggled. I know, sweetheart. I know. And I will spend the rest of my life making up to you. I knelt before them, taking Bryn's trembling hand. Baby, your daddy made a mistake. A terrible mistake. But he loves you so much. And now we're going to be a family. The 3 of us. Together. Promise. She looked between us, her face wet with tears, those honey gold eyes, my eyes, searching for truth. Grant pulled me close, the 3 of us tangled together on the couch. I promise. We're going to be the family we should have been all along. Bryn buried her face against my shoulder. I love you, Mommy. 6 years of grief dissolved in those 4 words. We were finally whole. 6 months later, I stood in my kitchen watching Grant help Bryn with her homework at the dining table, and something in my chest loosened. This had become our rhythm. Monday through Wednesday, Bryn stayed with me. Thursday through Saturday, she was with Grant. Sundays we spent together, all three of us. Parks, museums, ice cream shops, building the family we should have been from the start. Mommy, look. Bryn held up her math worksheet, a perfect score circled in red. Mrs. Chun says I'm the best in my class. That's because you're brilliant, I said, kissing the top of her head as I set down plates for dinner. Grant's eyes met mine across the table, warm and steady. He'd been showing up, not just for Bryn, but for me. Consistent, patient, never pushing, but always present. The anger I'd carried for 6 years had softened into something more complicated. Forgiveness felt impossible some days. But other days, watching him braid Bryn's hair with careful fingers, or hearing him read her bedtime stories with voices for every character. Those days, I remembered why I'd loved him once. After dinner, after Bryn had brushed her teeth and climbed into bed, Grant and I found ourselves on my small balcony with glasses of wine. The Portland skyline spread out before us, city lights blurring into soft focus. She's thriving, Grant said quietly. Have you noticed? She's making friends at school now, laughing more. She feels complete. Because she has both her parents. I took a sip of wine. Children need that foundation. So do adults. I looked at him. Really looked. 6 months of co-parenting had worn down his walls. The CEO mask had cracked, revealing someone softer underneath. Someone who looked at me like I was oxygen. Harper. He set down his wine glass, turning to face me fully. I need to say something, and I need you to hear me out. My pulse quickened. Okay. I never stopped loving you. The words hung between us, dangerous and raw. Every day for 6 years, I thought about you. Wondered if you were happy. Regretted every choice that led to losing you. And now, watching you with Bryn, watching you rebuild your life despite everything I took from you. His voice cracked. I fall more in love with you every single day. Grant. I'm not asking for anything, he interrupted gently. I know I don't deserve another chance. I know trust takes time to rebuild. I just need you to know where I stand. So when you're ready, if you're ever ready, you'll know I'm here, waiting, for as long as it takes. I should have felt angry, should have reminded him of the 6 years he stole. But standing there, watching moonlight catch in his storm-gray eyes, all I felt was tired. Tired of carrying rage. Tired of protecting my heart from someone who'd already broken it once. What if I'm scared? I whispered. What if I let you back in and you hurt me again? Then I'll spend the rest of my life proving you wrong. He reached for my hand, his touch tentative. Harper, I was a coward 6 years ago. I chose my mother's approval over you, over us. But I'm not that man anymore. Losing you taught me what actually matters. And what's that? You, Bryn. Family built on love and trust, not obligation. His thumb traced circles on my wrist. That's all that's ever mattered. I looked at our joined hands, felt the warmth of his palm against mine, remembered how those hands used to trace my collarbone after we made love, how his voice would go rough against my ear. You're everything, Harper. Everything. Kiss me, I said suddenly. If we're going to try this again, I need to know if there's still something there. Grant cupped my face, giving me time to change my mind. Then he kissed me, soft and sweet and full of 6 years of longing. And I felt it. The spark that had drawn us together 9 years ago. The connection that had survived betrayal and loss. When we pulled apart, I rested my forehead against his. Slowly, I said. We try this slowly, carefully. But Grant, if you ever choose anyone over us again, there won't be a first time. Not again. I promise you. 3 months later, on a quiet Saturday morning with Bryn drawing at my kitchen table, Grant knelt beside me. I want us to be a real family, he said. All 3 of us together. Harper, will you marry me again? Bryn bounced with excitement. Say yes, Mommy. Say yes. I looked at my daughter's hopeful face, at Grant's earnest expression, at the life we'd built from broken pieces. Yes, I said. Yes, I'll marry you. The wedding was small, just close friends. Sydney as my maid of honor. Bryn as flower girl in a purple dress that matched her personality. We married in the same park where I'd first pushed Bryn on swings during our earliest afternoons together. That night in the house we'd bought together, our family home, I stood in Bryn's doorway watching Grant read her a bedtime story. 7 years old now. Brilliant and beautiful. Loved by two parents who would move heaven and earth for her. "What are you thinking about?" Grant asked after Bryn fell asleep. "How we got here. All the pain and loss that led to this moment. Would you change it? If you could go back." I thought about 6 years of grief. About betrayal and heartbreak. But I also thought about the strength I'd gained. The woman I'd become. The appreciation I had for every moment with my daughter now. "No," I said finally. "I wouldn't change it. Because this version of us, broken and rebuilt, is stronger than we ever were before." Grant pulled me close. "I love you, Harper Whitmore Ashford. I love you too." If this story touched your heart, if you believe in the power of second chances and the kind of love that survives the unforgivable, I need you to subscribe to Mr. Williams Chronicles. Hit that like button. Share this with someone who needs to hear that broken things can be made beautiful again. Drop a comment. Would you have forgiven Grant? Was Harper right to give him a second chance? Because here's the truth. Your worth isn't defined by who left you. It's defined by how you rebuild. Sometimes the person who broke you can become part of your healing. Not because they deserve it, but because love is stronger than pain. Sometimes the worst betrayal leads to the greatest redemption. Sometimes the daughter you thought you'd lost is the one who brings you home. And sometimes the family you fight for is worth every battle, every tear, every moment of doubt. Until next time, this is Mr. Williams Chronicles reminding you that the best love stories aren't the ones without pain. They're the ones where people choose each other again and again, even after everything falls apart.